Hello everyone, my name is John, and in this video I'm going to show you how I went from this to this. So I'm going to show you exactly what I did from the time I received this with no leaves and no roots until now where it's big and beautiful and ready for its first repot. So let's check it out. Okay, alright, so we're talking about the Variegated Musa today, one of the most beautiful and highly sought after plants. Now I did purchase this from Thailand, and as is customary, all the leaves and roots were removed before shipping, so that does definitely save on the size and weight of the shipping costs, but it does present some challenges for you upon receiving your plant. Alright, so anytime you have a plant with no roots, you got to make sure you're giving it the correct amount of moisture without providing so much that you cause it to rot. So I didn't want to take any chances with this. It was recommended to me that I put it in pure perlite and stick it on a heat mat to encourage it to sprout, and that's exactly what I did for the first couple of months. So I put it in this standard 1-gallon pot here, and the idea with that was that this is a larger pot than it needed, but so that would allow the perlite to stay wet a little longer so I wouldn't have to water so often. And because it's pure perlite, it's not going to be in danger of overwatering. So I figured that would make my life a little easier and allow this thing to have a lot of room for a big healthy root system. Now what ended up happening is, because the way I potted it in here, the bottom of the corm was probably 4 or more inches above that heat mat. So it was still staying warm, but it wasn't getting the full benefits of that heat, because this plant loves warm weather, and anytime you're heating that root zone or the bottom of that corm, it's going to stimulate the root growth. So I proceeded to water every single day for probably 2+ months or so. And during that time, this stalk here, which was pretty much this color when I received it, was turning brown and sort of shriveling up, and I didn't know if that was good or bad, but actually these are just the stem here. It's not technically a real stem, it's just the leftover of the previous leaves, so it's normal for those to shrivel up and turn brown and kind of either fall away or just look like they're dying a little bit. So this thing was completely brown at one point, and I decided to pull it out of the perlite just to check, and there was a teeny tiny little bit of root that had started growing. So after a couple months of watering every day, I finally had my first sign of growth, my first proof of life. So at that point I knew I wanted to move it out of the perlite into a regular mix so that it would have more moisture and nutrients to really build momentum. So I chose to use a 5-1-1 mix, 5 parts bark, 1 part potting soil, 1 part perlite, because I was still afraid of overwatering, and so I wanted to make sure it did have access to water and nutrients, but was still like a very chunky, aerated mix. So from that point on, nothing really happened for a couple of months. I didn't see any roots coming out the drainage holes or near the surface. I assumed it was still alive, but I didn't really know. And the stem, the pseudo stem, was probably a good, 16 inches tall or so. And I started just little by little cutting it back, cutting it back, cutting it back, because the new leaf is going to come up in the center of all that, and I wanted to see, is there something somewhere in here that's actually growing? So eventually I got braver and braver, and I cut back until I saw some bright white growth inside here. It looked like there were about 3 little leaves coming up, pure white, and that was super exciting, but also I got really scared, because if I went through all this struggle to get this thing to root, and it decided to put out a bunch of purely white leaves, then it would have a really low chance of survival at that point. But what I found out is when the leaves are being formed deep inside the stem, they are all pure white, very, very white, maybe like a hint of greenish in there. But as the leaf becomes more mature and gets ready to actually pop open, it's going to develop the color that you are seeing here. So once I cut this back and I actually saw those, and then I had visible signs of growth, that was telling me that things were okay, I could relax a little bit and just kind of respond to how the plant was acting. So of course I babied it for a while, but everything has been going well from there. Now it's been in this pot for a while, which I'm sure you can see is quite small for how large this is. I don't have any signs of roots coming out of this yet, so I don't really know how full of roots this is or not. I am planning to repot today, so we will take a look in just a moment. But what I wanted to say is, if I did this over, what would I do differently? So first of all, if I ever get another one of these, same situation, no leaves, no roots, what I would do is I would stick it in gritty mix in the smallest possible pot that I could fit it in. Fill it with gritty mix, water it well, and then I'll stick it in the humidity bin. And that way it's gonna stay nice and moist, probably for a week or so. I would only have to water it once a week, maybe twice, and it's just gonna have constant access to moisture and aeration, plus the warmth and humidity created by that humidity bin environment. And I do believe that that would get this to root a lot faster. Not to mention that would be much easier than the perlite. And once the root system had started forming, it's gonna have more access to moisture and nutrients inside the gritty mix than it would in the pure perlite. So I don't know when I'll be able to try that again, but definitely my advice to you would be to use the smallest pot you can fit it in. Use a very well draining mix, ideally totally chunky, gritty mix style. Stick it in the humidity bin and water as needed, probably once a week or so. I have seen other people who have received plants in a similar condition, but from within the United States, they'd only travel the shorter distance and they're able to just kind of stick it in a pot of anything and it starts growing right away. But because this one spent 3 weeks in the mail, it took a really, really long time for it to recover from losing all of its leaves and roots and being shipped halfway around the world. Okay, so I'm gonna switch it into this new mix today, which is equal parts of bark chunks, bark dust, potting soil, and perlite. So this will be a nice, moist but chunky and aerated mix, which I think realistically will be a little too dry for a quickly growing musa, but I still want to keep it on the chunkier, drier side for now until I'm really comfortable with the actual needs of this plant. Because it's a lot easier to water something more often than to deal with a soil that's staying too wet. All right, so let's take a look at those roots. Okay, let's get it out of this pot. So hopefully it'll just slip right out. Oh yeah, oh yeah, okay, nice. Exactly what I was hoping for. Oh yeah, lots of nice white roots. So this thing is probably really gonna take off when it gets into that bigger pot. Okay, so I loosened the root zone a little bit. The corm is right down here. So anyways, that's all the soil I'm gonna get off of there. So let's put it into its new home. Okay, so we're going from 6-inch to 2-gallon. So it'll be a pretty big upgrade, but not too big. Standard for a fast growing plant. Oh God, I'm gonna have to vacuum. Okay, so there you have it. Got this all potted up in the new mix in the bigger pot. And I think it's gonna be able to grow all year in this size without needing another repot. So I feel so thankful that I've been able to receive this plant from Thailand and get it to sprout and grow. And you saw it had a nice healthy root system, so I'm very psyched about that. And I hope that this information in this video helps those of you who are considering purchasing one of these or who have already gotten one and are looking for some tips on how to root those successfully. Please keep in mind that it just does take time. It's very stressful for a plant to lose all its leaves and all its roots and get shipped halfway around the world. So be patient, use something that's very well draining. I do think that the gritty mix in the humidity bin would be the best choice, but I did root it successfully in pure perlite, so I can definitely vouch for that method. All right, and that is gonna do it. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button before you go and consider subscribing if you have not already. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I hope to connect with you in the comments section. All right, have a good one. Peace.